Welcome to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast, where we share tips, techniques, and true stories to support you in using the law of attraction and alchemy to create magic and live the life of your dreams. Here's your host, the founder of dailyalchemy.com, Michelle Martin Dobbins.
Hey, this is Michelle Martin Dobbins with Adventures in Alchemy, and I'm really excited today because my favorite LOA, Law of Attraction coach of all time, is here with me to chat. Jeannette Maw.
Wonderful intro.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but you're like my first coach.
No. Wow.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out the other day, like how long ago it was that I met you, because that was like before Good Vibe University.
Wow.
And it was my daughter, who's 13 now, was a baby. I'm not sure like how baby. She was still
I'm starting to feel old, Michelle.
Well, I'm about the same age as you. So, but she was in diapers, and This is the law of attraction story in and of itself, because I found you when you had the invisible website. Do you remember you tell the story about the invisible website?
I love that website. Every once in a while I go to the Wayback Machine. You know how Google will show you the old versions of your site, and it doesn't show it very well anymore. Oh, I did love that site. That's all the way back.
Yeah, that way back in the day. And oh my gosh, I just remember because I found your website, and I think the first coaching I did with you was like email coaching, and I did some group things and Good Vibe you and everything. But yeah, and I remembered you talking about how you had the website and people kept finding you, and then you were told that there was no way that they could find you. It was invisible. So
that's one of my favorite stories. Whenever I wonder, whether I'm doing it right, whether this will work, I remember, girl, you got clients with an invisible website. Relax.
Right? I mean, you can't do much better than that.
And I'll say this, back then I was working, it's so interesting because as soon as you were talking about how long we've known each other, I thought, wow, that's a long time. Imagine if I had been working, I've been working in affirmation lately, that's like for, I don't know, maybe 2 years or so, on how I get better at this every day. And I was thinking, wow, imagine if I'd have been working that affirmation clear back then. Imagine how much better I would be now. But the truth is, back then I was working a really powerful affirmation to draw clients into my business that I was nervous wasn't going to work. So I had powerful affirmations back then too.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who don't know you and love you like I do, can you tell a little bit about how you got started doing the law of attraction?
Yeah, I'd been a seeker for many years. And one day I ran across a book called How to Get Everything You Ever Wanted by Adrienne Calabrese. And as soon as I started reading the book, I knew the author. I should not have bought this book. She was asking me she was off her rocker, basically. She was really out there. She wanted me to do things like set up a sacred space and burn some incense and have a symbol of my desire and some just stuff that I was not into in any way, shape, or form. But I wasn't down. And but I had a personal rule for myself that I would do at least one thing from every book that I read, because I was a self-help book junkie. And the one thing, the least crazy thing that she was asking me to do was something she called scripting, and that was to talk about what you want as if it had already happened. And at the time, wow, I was in a dark place with the fostering, well, in life in general, but even with the fostering the animals, which is usually what brings me so much joy, it was bringing me down. I'd had a string of bad luck that was, no one had ever seen anything like it. Like my fellow rescue volunteers, they were talking about, oh my gosh, that poor Jeannette. Bad. So I scripted about how my most difficult dog got adopted. And it was just a super short script. I made it up on the fly. I didn't take it seriously. I knew this wasn't going to work. I was just doing it because I have that stupid rule. And that was Thursday night. I scripted how his name was Jeff, got adopted. And Thursday morning, the same dog I'd been dragging to the adoption fair for the past 3 months, where no one even turned to give him a second look, had 2 perfect families fighting over him. And that was I'd scripted a husband and wife, 2 kids, they got another dog, da, 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 da. like they met my description to a T and they were fighting over this dog. That has never happened before. Never happened before. The rescue coordinator called me and she was like, Jeannette, you better get down here right away. I don't know what to do. I couldn't understand what was happening. This does not happen. You get a dozen applications. Maybe one of them is worth considering. These two they were perfect. I drove down, I read their applications, and they were perfect, each of them. And they were insistent. Both of them were insistent on taking this dog home. And that's when I realized there might be something to this. This author's not so crazy after all. So and I don't think she talked about law of attraction. If she mentioned it in her book, I didn't remember it, but I wanted to know more. So I tried to find other stuff to read, and there wasn't much back then. This was before The Secret, before Ask and It Is Given, before there was a whole show full of law of attraction books at the bookstore. But that was it. I was hooked. I was a different person after that experience. I eventually found Lynn Grabhorn's Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting, which led me to Abraham. And I have not looked back since.
And we're all glad that you haven't. I learned so much from you even now. I got a new book from your book list.
Which one?
Different like membranes and different realities.
Parallel Universes of Self by Frederick Dodson.
Yes, I just started reading it. It's so good because that's been one of the things I remember. It was on a call, actually, I think on Good Vibe University, that I heard someone talking about the membrane theory and how, like, she was adopting a child and her husband, like, experienced, like, flowing in and out of these different membranes where in one, the woman was, like, deciding not to do it. And then the other one, she did do it, like, while they're at the hospital to get the baby. And when she told that story, like, that's been something that I have just, like, worked with ever since, because she was saying there's all the different membranes and you get to, like, you're in your boat, which one are you going to paddle to, which one are you going to drip to? And I'm like, so if I don't like this membrane, I got to, like, steer to the other one.
I love that way of thinking of it because it reminds us that there isn't any such thing as will I be able to create it or not, because it exists. That version that you've got in mind, all of the versions all exist. It's a matter of which one are we choosing based on how we focus and what we vibrate?
Yeah. And that's, like, to me, I mean, the truth of that strikes me, but it also is, like, such a relief because you don't have to create it. I know. You just have to align with the one you want.
It puts it more within reach, doesn't it? It doesn't feel like we have to conjure this thing that seems really challenging. No, it's already rolling. The only question is, do you know the vibration of it? And can you hold that one long enough to get there? Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. And I don't know who mentioned the book to me. I believe it was someone at GVU. It probably wasn't until the third time someone mentioned it that I actually don't know how I got the book. I'm going to be honest. I don't even know if I put it in my Amazon cart or if someone else sent it to me. I don't know how that book got in my house. But one day I picked it up. I said, because I got a lot of books in here. I picked it up. I was like, let's give this a try. And that guy drives me nuts because he does not use an editor. Oh my God.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Right? Every page, there's like at least 2 errors. Driving me crazy. But you know what? The content was so good. I was like, you just got to get over it, girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really just the first 100 pages that were impactful, but that was enough. It's a big book, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I think I'm just into, like, maybe the second or third chapter, but I'm like, this is so good and so spot on with how I think things work. So it's always...
You know what I was curious... Well, not that we want our whole call to be a review of the book, but I was curious about who his influences were because he doesn't give credit to where any of these ideas came from. I posted that on the Facebook page. And someone said, that's because they came from aliens. He actually mentions that in the book, Jeannette. And I was thinking, that might be the case. But I sure felt like I recognized a lot of Abraham, some Bashar in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Neville for sure. But yeah, good material there.
Definitely, for sure. Well, you were talking about how, like, the first book you read, the lady was talking about candles and altars. And so I'm just curious. For me, I like the spiritual aspect of law of attraction. I put it into how I I practice, but I know like you can really do it with or without. And I just wondered like if you had any thoughts on like how they overlap, or you know what I'm saying? Or
well, yes, I do. And I think there are a variety of styles of engaging conscious creation. I mean, it doesn't have to be a woo-woo thing. I have coach colleagues who specifically work with like corporate white collar men who the last thing they're ever going to do is write a page of affirmations. You know what I mean? But I personally have a lot of fun with, I mean, I have changed a lot since those days when I thought burning incense was weird. I've covered a lot of then. And I think for me, that makes it more fun. And so I embrace it. But I don't think that it really matters how we do it, because at the heart of this, it's focusing our mind. It's focusing our consciousness that's making the difference. And so however we enjoy that most, it doesn't have to be a strange, weird thing. But if we like it to be, you know, if we like having fun with the crystals or with whatever else, what I like to explore is the overlap between witchcraft and conscious creation. Because I remember I wrote a post years ago where I said something like, wait a minute. And then I think it was something about black magic, gossiping black magic or something. I don't know. I said something about conscious creators as witches or something. Like I was asking the question, could we be? And my business partner at the time, Kim Falconer, replied saying, well, duh, of course, Jeanette. I thought you knew that. We're all witches.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it because I think I'm like with you. I don't think anybody needs to do anything other than align their energy, you know. But if doing those practices are fun for you and it helps you align your energies, just like any other tool, visualizing or whatnot. But
I like the way Bashar talks about it as permission slips, you know, these things that are outside of us that we might engage in our rituals or routines. Like even I have a purple pen that I write things down with, whether it's journaling or intentions or affirmations. And that pen feels really special to me. It's not a pen that I use for anything else.
Ooh, yeah.
And Bashar would say, it's not the pen that's magic. You are the magic. You are the one. But if you can tap your own magic through this pen, then have fun with it by all means. He calls them permission slips. I think that's a nice way to remember that the power is in us, but whatever helps us access that is fine to engage. And like another permission slip could be a prescription from a doctor, because we're the ones who affect our healing. But if we believe that it's whatever this thing, the purple pen or the prescription, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I totally agree too. I find it interesting though. I listened to when you bring up like witchcraft and conscious creation and how they're similar. I listened to Gordon White. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does a podcast on magic, and he's like all these people who are into like witchcraft and magic who are like, and especially I think he was kind of a lot talking about like the men who are into chaos magic and stuff and working with these spirits. And he's like, and they poo on these law of attraction ladies and stuff. And, you know, and he goes, but I've been to both of their conferences and the cars are a whole lot nicer at the law of attraction one.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I thought, you know, and he was kind of talking about how like some of these people feel like, well, you know, it's not spiritual for me to want the nice car or like, you know, they're working more with spirits. And to me, like the spirits that people might be working are just probably other aspects of their consciousness or not. But whatever, I still think whatever results you get are still going to come from what you believe about it. But I just thought it was so funny because
that is funny. You know, I get that sometimes too, that whole argument that like, manifesting money isn't spiritual. Like there are some things you can do with your creative power that are spiritual and things that aren't. And I like Abraham. Well, Abraham said it. Ptah says everything is spiritual. There isn't anything that exists here that didn't come from spirit. So to be making those distinctions is really a judgment of one's own that is completely arbitrary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would argue unhelpful. We want what we want. There's nothing wrong with whatever we want.
Yeah. I like, there are aspects of the Buddhist religion that I like, but when people will tell me this, and I think maybe they're getting it wrong, but that's just my opinion, that like, you know, the aim of Buddhism is to have no desires. And I'm like, but then you're desiring to have no desires. So that's a desire.
You can't get away from it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm reading When Things Fall Apart by, how do you say her name? Pemachrodron.
Oh,
famous
yeah,
American.
Yeah. Is Pemba?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'll put a link, though, in the show notes for that.
I love the book, but every time I run into those ideas about, dropping desire, because desire is where, all your problems start. I'm like, I was liking this so much until I got to that. But that's a lot of material. It's a matter of filtering what resonates, and we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Take what does work.
Yeah.
The same applies in Frederick's book and everything else that we engage. It might not all resonate with us, same with Abraham. But the parts that do, boy, that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah. And I like my daughter and I have been talking lately all the time about the paradoxes. And so it's kind of like that, to me, like that's one of the big paradoxes of working with the law of attraction is like, yes, you get to have what you desire, but you also have to be okay without it because that's how you get it. You know what I mean?
I know. I just was shaking my head like, I know. It drives me crazy. It's once we make peace with that, once we understand that and learn how to work with it. But for some people, trying to pry their fingers off what they're grasping at is a really tricky thing to do as a coach. But boy, once a person understands that routine, it's like the world is at their fingertips. It is so cool to be able to know that you can want something without having to have it. So your well-being isn't conditional on it. And that's what makes you a better match for it when you don't need it.
Yeah. It's so, sometimes, like you said, it's so hard to get people to grasp that. But once you find that...
It isn't just my clients who get it, who have a hard time. Sometimes it's me too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I know that when things aren't working for me, I can like look up and go, oh, wait a minute. I've been way too freaking serious about everything.
Right.
I need to
making this
chill out and realize that I already have enough. I always loved the guy that does Sedona Method, Hale Dwoskin. He did this thing about how like he was always working on his desires and stuff. And his wife was like, man, when are you ever going to stop? Our life is pretty awesome. And he was like, I don't know. I'm going to focus on that for a while. So he said, I just meditated on, I have enough. And like, that feeling of having enough just to like let go. And he said, you know what happened? Because I wasn't trying to get anything more. I just got everything else that I wanted next. Once I said, I already have enough. I'm good. I'm just really content in having what I have. And he's like, the universe says you have enough. Well, let's give you more of enough.
It's so cool how it works. And when you say that to someone who hasn't experienced it, they have a hard time believing it. They're like, even if you can explain why it makes sense energetically, it's a hard thing to trust, but once you've experienced, I think that makes it easier to remember to go back to it again and again the next time we find ourselves getting attached.
Yeah, it's the paradoxes. They're so fun.
That's a good way to approach them, as fun instead of maddening.
Right. Well, another paradox in a way. Well, you mentioned Kim, your partner, Kim Faulkner, that you guys do Good Vibe Astrology, which is super cool. And because I love your take, because a lot of people have that take on astrology is like, it's like controlling you. And I know my daughter and I, we love buying all these old used books, and we actually threw a book away, which is almost like sacrilege for us. But she was like, I do not want anybody else to get this, because we got this old astrology book, and it was basically saying, with your chart, you're going to have heart conditions and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it was like, I mean, it was written a long time ago, like early 1900s. So by a man, not that I have anything against that. It had that more masculine perspective on it. Right. So, but can you share a little bit about how your perspective?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, everything is energy. So that includes the stars and the planets, and those energies. To deny them seems to me like it's a wasted opportunity, but they aren't dictating my fate. It doesn't mean that based on the position of my Venus and my Mars and my Mercury, that these certain things that I will be this way and these things will happen to me. But it's reflective of an energy that's present, that when I'm aware of what that is, it might help me steer my life better, more towards where I would like it to be. There's like, I can use it as an advantage. I can leverage that energy rather than operating in ignorance of it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not paying any attention to astrology, but I find it incredibly fun. My favorite thing about it is, I'll say two things. One, it feels like it opens such a powerful door to self-love. I mean, for a person to study their chart and to learn these things about themselves, it feels like I just experience a lot of self-love in that practice. But what I also love about it is that it gives me powerful reasons to believe when I can see certain things, and I can match that up with how that supports my desire. For me, that's like, well, it's written in the stars. I mean, I know I said I don't consider it to be fate or destiny there, but I can leverage it in a way that means this energy is already supporting what I want. So I'm ahead of the game here. I'm not the only one who's flowing energy towards this. The stars are flowing it for me as well. I don't know. It just, there's a way to interpret it where it can be enhancing. You know, one of Abraham's exercises that I love the most, where they ask you to write down what you want, and then on the page you list the reasons why you want it, and then you list reasons why you believe you can have it. The purpose of that exercise is to amplify desire and belief, because when we have strong desire and strong belief, we are unstoppable. What I like about astrology is that it helps me build out my reasons to believe. I'm a big fan of that. And plus, it's just plain fun, and it feels kind of witchy, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I love it too. And I remember one time Kim was saying something about how you weren't born at a certain time and place to put you into this space, but the perfect time and a place for who you were energetically is where you came in. So it was you dictating it, not the stars dictating it.
Yeah.
And I like that. So it's more like a weather map or something. It's, you know,
we're still in charge. Yeah, we're not abdicating any power. We're not stuck with anything that we don't want. And that's another thing too. Whenever an astrologer has an interpretation on something that doesn't feel good to me, then I know my inner being doesn't agree. It sees it differently. And it's not hard to find someone else who sees it differently. Kim Falconer is one of those astrologers who's very savvy about interpreting astrology in an empowering way.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to play with anything, it should feel good, right?
Agreed.
You were talking about, I love the story about how you got into law of attraction, but do you have any other favorite stories of like your favorite manifesting story? That
I got to say, the one that still blows my mind is that, remember the one day when I had foster kittens at home? This was with, I don't know, maybe 2 ex-boyfriends ago. And I was living with a guy at the time who was not supportive of my fostering efforts. And I can't even understand who doesn't love kittens. Who doesn't love kittens? But he didn't. Mostly because I invested so much energy and attention in it. Maybe he wanted that instead. I don't know why, but he didn't. And that didn't stop me from doing it. I thought, that's fine. If he wants to be ornery about it, that's fine. But this is who I am. This is what I love. And he knew it when we moved in together. So it's not like it's a surprise. Okay, so I got a new litter of kittens, and I keep them in the office so he doesn't ever have to be bothered by them. And I've got them in the office, and I'm playing with them. I've got them all set up with their new litter boxes and food dish. And they're just teeny weeny, adorable kittens. And I'm enjoying them. And then I look at the clock and I see that it's 3:00, and I realize he'll be home soon. And I felt myself brace for trouble. I felt my energy constrict, like I was getting ready for the battle, because his normal routine when he would come home and see that, and I often got kittens on the spur of the moment. There wasn't a lot of advance notice. Someone would call and say, hey, it's an emergency. We need to place these guys right now. Can you take them? So whenever he would come home and open my office door and say hello and see that I had kittens, he'd be like, slam the door, and I'd get the cold shoulder for 3 days. And so I was bracing for that whole disapproval, that negative energy from him. And when I felt myself constrict like that, I realized that my expectation of this response from him was helping to create it. I was eliciting this from him. I was a co-creator to him being a jerk. So I thought, well, I don't want to be a co-creator. He could be a jerk on his own, but I don't want to help with that. So I imagined it differently, just because I don't want that energy in me. So I imagined instead that, he knows that I love it. It was hard for me to imagine him loving the kittens. I couldn't go that far. I could imagine that, just so I was changing the thought that didn't feel good, that, he's going to be mad. I changed it to, you know what? He knows how much this means to me. He knows how much I love this, and he's supportive of it because he knows I love it. About as much as I could do with it, but that thought did release that negative energy. So then a couple hours later, he rolls in, and it's not like I sat there meditating for 30 minutes on it. It was just that nice, light, easy thought, which is how often the stuff works best when we don't try too hard. I got to remember that.
Right.
And it's not like I was trying to make him be different. I just wanted to find a thought that felt better. This was more about me than it was about changing him. But when he came home 2 hours later and opened up the door and he saw the kittens, the normal routine was out the window. What he did was his face lit up in a huge smile. He looked at me and he said, "Someone's got kittens." And he got down on his hands and knees and he tickled them under their chins and he pet them on their heads. And he looked up at me with this huge smile and he asked me, "What have you named them?" Which is a ridiculous question, because if he had been paying attention, he knows I can't name my fosters. I get too attached to them. So I never name them. But I just stared at him open-mouthed. I was like, I don't even know who this man is. I figured the aliens must have taken his body over on the way home from work, because this is not my boyfriend. What I realized in that, and it goes back to my crackhead neighbor, which is another one of my favorite stories, that this whole time I'd been thinking that he was incapable of supporting, that I knew so solidly who he was. I wasn't making room for him to be anyone else. And as soon as I had just a light little different thought, it made room for him to show up differently. And I'm going to say that tripped me out in a way that when you ask me, what's your favorite manifesting story? That one comes to mind, because I realized our expectations of people are eliciting that from them. And if we could raise our expectations, we would have different experiences with them, which is why I love those quotes from Abraham and every other spiritual teacher who invites us to see the best in others, because when that's what we look for, we're much more likely to experience it.
Yeah, that's so true. And the funny thing is, I noticed, like, whenever I ask people this question, the answer you get is almost always something to deal with personal relationships, and it's so funny because, I mean, really, that's like what our life is made of. But when you look at people who are wanting to like start with law of attraction or like ads for like the fancy classes, it's always like the big cars and the beach house and da 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 da. But like, if you still don't get along with the people you live with, then that's just still not going to be any fun.
So true. So true. And that's easier to do than I think we believe. And I know, look, and that kind of gets into some interesting territory, because, well, I mean, black magic and voodoo sort of interpreted as when you're trying to have influence over others. Like when I'll get inquiries from prospective clients frequently, so frequently I wrote a blog post about it so I could just send the link back to them saying, I don't do, when they wanted help getting a boyfriend back or a girlfriend back or a husband back. And I don't like to do that. I don't like to focus on a particular person. I will be happy to focus on you being happy. Maybe you even being happy in a relationship. Maybe even being happy in this relationship, but not if it means that he has to show up and propose marriage and put a ring on your finger. I think that gets into a sort of manipulation, and it also misses the point of our power, because the point of conscious creation isn't to make things happen out there so we can be happy. It's to learn how to be happy, because that's what we wanted all along. And when we could just nail that one so that we're not conditional on this, that, or the other in order to feel good, then that's when everything we want happens. So but that idea that we do have influence on others, whether we're practicing it consciously or not, it's worth remembering that what we expect from others is what we're likely to get. But still, if someone says, "Hey, will you help me get my boyfriend back?" I'm like, pass. You're going to have to plenty of others will do it, but I am not one.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of falls into that realm of like the paradoxes of, you may think you know what you want, but you know, a lot of people who do that work to get the boyfriend back then realize that they're stuck with a boyfriend that wasn't what they really wanted.
Oh, wow. Ooh, I just read an interesting book. I sure can't remember the name of it, but it was fiction, and it was about two magic sisters that witches run in their family. They come from witches, and their aunts have clients who came for a love potion, and they did one for a girl. And the guy that was the target of, he was married, and he left his wife, and he wouldn't leave her alone, so much so it drove her crazy. Like, he just never wanted her out of his sight. He stopped caring about every other aspect of life, and he was driving her crazy. She begged the witches to make it stop, and they're like, we warned you, it's a powerful spell, you shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But so often, you know, what we think we want, it turns out not to be it, what we really want. I've done it. Remember when I was manifesting like blog hits? I wanted a certain amount of traffic to my blog, or even manifesting a full thriving coaching practice. I thought once I had that, I'm home free because this is the work that I love. And if I could do this, then I'll be happy for the rest of my life. But I had practiced creating that from a place of stress. I'd been stressed out in corporate world for many years. I was stressed out when I was deciding whether or not to quit my job. I was stressed out when I finally did quit it and had no other sources of income. I had not been hired as a coach when I did it. I was stressed out building my business. Stress through and through. That was my dominant vibration. And I did call in the clients, but then I was stressed out because I was manifesting that I was a brilliant coach in high demand. And my new stress was, I say no one, I really mean my dad, whose opinion meant a lot to me, didn't think that I was cut out for self-employment, and he told me so. And I was nervous he might be right. He said, it takes a lot of ambition, a lot of drive. I don't think you've got it. I was just so nervous that he might be right and this wasn't going to work. And then when it was working in short order, I did have a full practice, but I was still stressed out because, first I was stressed out with the new clients because I was worried that I might not be an effective coach, even though I was manifesting that I was a brilliant one. And then I was stressed out because there were so many people who wanted to work with me that I was working way too much. I hated to say no to anyone.
Yeah.
So it was another example about how when you think this thing is going to make you feel differently, no, you are the only one who can make you feel differently. If what you want is peace and relaxation, you better start practicing that vibration yourself, because the clients or the money or whatever it is you think is going to make you feel it is wrong. It cannot override your dominant vibration. Law of attraction says you will get more of whatever that is. So if you want that to be different than what it is, that's on you. It's not on your surroundings or situations or circumstances.
Yeah.
I learned that one many.
I still learn it.
Many times. I probably will again.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, just when you think you got it all figured out, you're like, oops, I did that again.
You know what, though? Seriously, to be able to laugh it off and to embrace it as, the process of learning and getting better at it. I like when Abraham added their steps 4 and 5 to their process about how, it's where you keep doing it, but you don't judge yourself for it anymore. You know this is part of the process. This is where expansion comes from. So, and I think at the heart of that too is what you spoke to earlier, Michelle, about how we learn to want something without needing it, without making it a big, hairy deal.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot.
It's good, clean energy. Yep.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you think, I know in the Unity Church, they talk about a thing called chemicalization back in the day where people did, when they started doing this kind of work, they're slightly different, but their bend is positive Christianity. And it has so much, they do their treasure maps, I guess, which is basically a vision board and, that kind of thing. Do you think that somebody can overdo doing different practices or
I'm positive of it. Yeah, I mean, especially when they're doing it in order to get that. It was news to me when Abraham said, you don't engage these processes to manifest things. I was like, then why else do we do it? I said, you do it because it makes you feel better right here and now. And I was like, oh, I get it. But if a person is doing this in order to get that, you may as well just go be a muggle and do the whole action routine, because this is not what conscious is about.
Right. Yeah. You're bringing that whole world theory to this, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
And that if I'm doing a whole, and I say I because I have done this, if I'm doing everything I can think of out of a sense of desperation because I really need this to happen, or I really need the other thing not to happen, my energy is so dialed into resistance that I'm a powerful magnet that universe cannot deny. So no matter how many things I say, no matter how many affirmations I write or scripts I speak or visions I engage about the thing that I want, if I'm doing it because I don't want the other thing, then I just keep activating the very thing that I don't want while I say and think that I'm doing the other. That's when Abraham talks about it's, there's two ends of the stick to every subject, and a lot of people don't understand which end they're holding. And I think that's why so often their advice is get off the subject, because they don't think a lot of us can reliably grab the right end. And I understand where that comes from. I've been in that boat. I've seen others do the same thing. Very savvy, very self-aware people fooling themselves about what they're vibrating, insisting that, no, I'm dialed on what I want here. But even my mentor coach, Gina Gabellini, tells a story about how, or at least she told me about how she was in Abraham's hot seat, and she was asking about, speaking of voodoo on others, she had a stepdaughter that she called her a stepdaughter. I don't know if they were, anyway, she wanted this girl to eat healthy because she, in Gina's opinion, she was very much into health and nutrition. She drank too much pop and she ate way too much candy, and she really wanted her to have healthier habits. And she said to Abraham, I'm telling you, I'm focusing on her being healthy, but she still keeps up her old ways. And Abraham said, so what are you vibrating? And Gina said, basically, I'm vibrating milk. And Abraham says, no, you're still on pop. Like, you don't want her to drink the pop. And that Gina could do that. Gina, who I looked up to, she's know anyone else who was better at this, and that she could miss that. That was a nice thing to hear, actually, because it helped me realize that we're all in progress. We're all learning our way through this, and that not to beat ourselves up so much if we sometimes are activating the thing that we don't want.
Yeah. So if somebody's either in that point, like they're in that resistance, or they think maybe they're holding the wrong end of the stick, what would you suggest?
Get off of it. Get off of it. Get off. I had a client once who was manifesting love. That's what I got hired for. And she couldn't go to the topic in a positive way. It was clear she was wound up in some pretty tight knots about it. So I said, this isn't going to make sense to you, but we're going to focus on work for a while. So we did. We focused on work because that was something that she had success with, that she enjoyed, that she had some ambition around, and it was easy to find something new to be engaged with and excited about. And I think she only did it for, I want to say, maybe 2 weeks before she showed up on our third session. And she was reporting in, and at the very end, she was like, Jeannette, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to jinx it, but I think I met a boy. That's as much as she would say. And then I didn't hear from her for a while, and I was like, oh, she just really didn't like the approach. And when she finally reached out again, she was like, I'm full on in love. A couple months later, she's like, yep, we're getting married. So that whole ability to distract ourselves with something that feels better. I know some people find that very dissatisfying because they think if they don't actively work the thing they want, it can't happen. But the opposite is true. Sometimes what we have to do is stop trying to work it. Remember Abigail Stidley's story? I love her story. And I don't know that she would call herself a conscious creator, but she was working on so many things that she wanted for so long. She worked herself into a point of exhaustion, to the point where she literally could not do anything. She could do nothing but lay down. I mean, she was physically incapable of continuing her old routine. So she went to bed. Well, she not only went to bed, she got tired of laying in bed. Sometimes she'd lay on the floor, sometimes she'd lay on the couch, but she just laid down for 5 days. And in that period of time, almost just like the story you were telling earlier, everything that she'd been, well, not everything, but a whole bunch of things that she'd been trying so hard to create all happened once she stopped trying so hard. So, but that's, asking someone to stop fretting about it, to stop trying. for some people, that's hard advice to follow, myself included at times.
Yeah. It definitely goes back to like what we're saying, like why you do the practice in the first place is just to feel good, because that's like,
that's what we're after.
Yeah. And we think it should be so much more complicated than that, but really that's like our only job.
I think a lot of us, we've been so highly trained that we have to earn the reward, that we have to work for it, and you can't expect results if you didn't put in the time. Then in order to satisfy that belief, if we have an expectation that it takes a long time and you have to work really hard, sometimes we use our manifesting process as a way to satisfy that belief, and that doesn't help. That it really was meant to be easy and fun and swift. So
yeah, that reminds me of a story that I heard you tell once about being at your old job with I think it was where you were selling maybe insurance or stocks or something, and like it was really dismal, and you were like, what feels good now? Going to lunch.
Gosh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but first I refocused with my very first Prey Rain journal entry, the very first time I'd ever done it. I'd heard about it, but I'd never done it. Then I went to a staff meeting where they basically said, you're all going to be fired if we don't turn our numbers around in 2 weeks. I'm like, 2 weeks? I basically felt like they just told us, you all better get your resumes together. They meant it as a threat, but yeah, it was a real threat that we were in. This department was in jeopardy of not existing if we didn't start selling something. So, because it was a new department. And so I went back to my desk and I was like, well, this ridiculous routine they've been having me work isn't working, where we're cold calling and reading from script. It was ridiculous. So I said, what do I want to do? And I thought of the Prey Rain journal, and I wrote it out just the way I'd been taught. You write about it as if it had already happened. So I said, isn't it great how prospects find me, how perfect we are for each other, what great rapport we have, and da-da-da. Which is a very, very, very different focus than I'd had of, oh my God, this is miserable. Why are we having to do this? This wasn't how it was supposed to work when they hired me. We were not supposed to be doing cold calls. Anyway, total redirection of the vibration just for maybe 5 minutes it probably wasn't even that long, while I wrote out a couple sentences of what I preferred. And then I asked myself, what sounds good next? Instead of doing what they'd been telling us to do, and what sounded good next was to go to lunch. And I went to lunch and I goofed off for a good hour and a half, enjoying myself, which had not happened since I started that job. And then in the elevator, and then after lunch, I said, what sounds good next? And I was surprised when it said, go back to work. I was like, okay. So in the elevator, on my way back to my cubicle, there was a guy in the elevator and he said, who are you? And I had made the mistake of asking the president of the company a couple weeks before who he was. When he said who he was, I was like, oh my God, I should have known who he was. And so I wasn't ever going to ask anyone ever again who they were. So I just said who I was. I didn't ask who he was. I assumed he's some upper bank manager who I probably should know. And when he said, what do you do? And I said, I sell 401k plans. And he said, I didn't know the bank sold 401k plans. I was like, this is why we can't sell any. Upper management doesn't even know we have this product. He said, come with me. And I thought, great, I'm going to have to go explain to him about this product he didn't even know the bank had. I follow him to his office, and he doesn't work for the bank. This is the only office in the entire building that doesn't belong to the bank. It's the property manager had office space in the building, which I didn't realize. So it's a totally separate company. He shows me his desk, and it's covered with sales literature from 401k vendors. And he says, I haven't been able to make heads or tails of this in weeks. Can you help me? And I could talk about 401k all day long with someone who wanted to. So I was delighted. I had my satchel with me with my information, and I pulled it out, and I told him everything he needed to know about everyone. I'm getting goosebumps telling this story again.
I get goosebumps every time I hear it.
So I had a great conversation with him for about 15 minutes, and then he stood up, and I was like, oh, my fun's over. Now I got to go back to work. But instead of walking me back to the elevator, he walks me down the hall to his HR director, and he says, Shelly, meet Jeannette. Jeannette, meet Shelly. Shelly, Jeanette's going to be implementing our 401k plan. Sign whatever she needs you to sign. And he turns to me and he says, how soon can you have that to us? And I was astonished because in training, they taught us this is a 6-week process that just like 20 minutes. But you've got to count the whole hour and a half of the goof off lunch and the Prey Rain journal entry, because it wouldn't have happened without that vibration shift. It's not the Prey Rain journal that was magic. It was that it shifted my vibration. That's where the magic came from. So yeah, that was really super cool.
But yeah, I love that story. It's just so funny. But I also had people who Like they're like, well, so you just get to goof off all day. But that story is like the perfect highlight. Like when you tapped in and you asked an alignment, it said lunch, which was awesome.
Right.
But then when it said go back to work, you went back to work.
Yeah, I was like, shrug my shoulders. Okay.
Because sometimes I have that too. It's like what my alignment tells me to do. Like I'm like, I don't really want to do that. but then I'm like, okay, well, and sometimes I don't, if I'm being honest, because I'm like, oh, that's too scary or that's too out there. Or I don't know what kind of result I'm going to get from that. But whenever I do listen to like what I'm told or what I'm guided when I am in alignment, then it's the right thing to do. But
you know, and that's the thing, to be willing to be open about that, because so often we anticipate, we think we know how it's going to unfold and what it's going to look like. And when we think we know that, we often miss the clues that are saying, you know, how to be in the elevator with the guy who's been under your nose the whole time that you couldn't rendezvous with because you were in the vibration of struggle and it's not working.
Yeah, because probably he would have never connected with you if you hadn't shifted that.
Well, I'd been there for quite a few months and that happened. So
yeah, that makes sense. I know that you have some client calls coming up soon. So I want to make sure that I get you to tell me a little bit for everybody about Good Vibe University. Well, and you have so many things, so many cool things, but like that's one of my favorites. So maybe you can share about that and then other ways that they can connect with you too.
Yes. So Good Vibe University, where conscious creators gather for a good time. One of the things that I noticed early on in my practice was that no one else was doing it. I felt so lonely. Whenever I would try and talk, I was so excited about this. I had to talk with everyone about it. And they just looked at me like I was crazy. Not talking to me. And I was like, all I want is someone else I could talk to about this stuff with. And then eventually that desire grew into, and wouldn't it be great if I got paid for it so I could quit this stupid job? And then shortly after that, I ran across an article that's the headline of the magazine was, "Do you need a life coach?" And I was like, life coach? What's a life coach? I was mesmerized. I walked over and I was at the grocery store. I had frozen goods in my bags, but I put them on the ground and I read the whole article right there on the spot. And I was like, coaching. It called me. And I thought it was calling me to hire coaches, but no, it was calling me to be one. It was the answer to what I'd wanted. So Good Vibe University is where we get to hang out with each other so we don't feel so lonely in our conscious creation practice. And we can, when we're hanging out with others who are up to the same game, I think it makes us better at it because it doesn't feel so strange. It normalizes the magic. But I do also do some other fun things. I've got a blog at Good Vibe Blog and the podcast, which is now also posted over there at the blog. That's at goodvibeblog.com. And I got some ebooks and I do occasional private coaching. But that's my idea of a good time. If anyone else is interested in more support for their manifesting game, I would love to help you out. Start at Good Vibe Blog. That's probably a good place to begin.
Yeah, there's all kinds of good stuff there. And I love your new website. I mean, I loved your old one too, but
I did too.
But I love this one. It's so easy because they can just go. You can go and find the little boxes for the books and the Good Vibe You, and everything is.
Well,
very nice.
I'll say this: I like the colors of my last one, but it needed an update. It needed an update. That's all there is to it. So it's updated now, and I'm still doing some tweaks to it. It's far from done, but I enjoy playing with it. When I woke up today and I was like, what do I get to do first? At first I was like, I get to talk to Michelle. And I was like, I love that my workday is structured, that it's something that I love. And then after this, I love that I get to go do that. I love that I've set my life up with work that I enjoy and look forward to. And I wish that for all of us, because that's what it can be when we let it be.
Right. And your work is actually bringing you more good stuff into your life because you love doing it.
Yep. Just like that.
Yeah. Easy peasy.
It can be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I'm going to put links to your blog and links to Good Vibe You and all the little places that they can find you on social media. And everybody who's listening, go check it out. You will not be disappointed. You will definitely get a smile from Jeanette's.
Well, I just want to say thanks for letting me come and play with you. You are my idea of a good time, Michelle. I love the work that you do in the world and that I got to be part of it today. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And I'm sure I'm going to be seeing you on the interwebs around soon.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And go check out the show notes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Would you like some help creating more magic in your life? I've got a ton of freebies and goodies for you. They're all tucked away inside my magical freebie vault. You can get free access, though. You just have to go to www.dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. Again, that's dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault. And when you get there, you can just plug in your name and email and you will get instant access to all kinds of goodies. There are daily and weekly manifesting planners, the How to Shift Your Vibe in 5 Minutes e-kit that has audios and a workbook. There are moon manifesting planners and daily love lists and money trackers and all kinds of goodies right there. I didn't want to make you have to go to a bunch of different pages and sites and wait for certain freebies to come out. So I just took all of my freebies and put them in one place where you could just sign up one time and download any of them that you want at any time that you needed. So you can just head on over to dailyalchemy.com/magical-freebie-vault and download them today. Have a magical day.
Thanks for listening to the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. Connect with me on thedailyalchemy.com or Facebook at facebook.com/Michelle Dobbins, author. Join us next time for even more magical life tips.